Hey friends, this is JB presenting wisdom to you. And today we're moving into Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Powerful, powerful proverbs, powerful wisdom, sayings, a time for everything. The time where we conjure up images of folk songs from the 60s, the proverbs and the wisdom that we're getting through this. And when we think of the time for everything, I think of the fact that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, or whatever this guy's name is out there throwing big missiles over his neighbors, okay? Then on the other side, he is detonating bombs. How do they know the bombs are not on these missiles? And he's going over with them. And then where? Into the sea, towards us? I mean, this guy is starting he's starting basically the strong arm tactics that have been shown to be effective long ago. Do you remember in World War II when Hitler started coming into power? He essentially realized that no one had the cojones to go ahead and stand up for what they believe in. Like many Christians out there, I would argue these days, a lot of Christians are afraid to say Jesus. They're afraid to stand up for their convictions, what's right. And what happens is it creates a spiraling effect, and everyone else does the same thing, and no one's standing up for nothing until the evil one comes and tries to take the whole show. And North Korea is doing this very thing, the same thing that Hitler was doing. He started off, essentially, World War II, before it really began, he started off dominating and going up to places with his henchmen and essentially saying, I'm the boss, and what are you going to do with it about it? And then once he slowly, progressively, bit by bit, started gaining more territory, he just kept the ball rolling. He kept it rolling, and pretty soon he was making deals with other leaders in other nations and then breaking those very things, breaking those deals. And before you knew it, Hitler was on the march, and his whole Nazi regime was mobilized, ready to move, and doing that, the bad stuff. Now, what's so different about him and this North Korean leader? Not much, just time. And Japan's not doing nothing. China is not doing nothing. South Korea hasn't done anything. And I would argue, I really wonder who's going to stand up. Are they going to lead it to the U.S. to come in, be the heroes? I wonder what Trump would be saying when he says, why would we just do that anyways? Because we're years away from it. Why not let them launch missiles at whoever over there? But then again, he doesn't want to do that. He knows that something needs to be done. And it's a challenge. I was thinking, what can we do? When is it time for war? Or when is it time to even nuke them? Such a terrible thought. But on the other hand, what's worse, us nuking them or them nuking us? All right. And if you stand by, you will fall into that same trap that many of the leaders of the League of Nations did back before World War II kicked off. Well, the time for everything, a time for everything, Ecclesiastes 3 is, for everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. Isn't that just boom? I mean, for everything. This is talking in absolutes. This is huge, because when you start to grab the whole world and put it into a few sentences, wow, you better know what you're talking about. A time for everything. A time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. That's true. Is that not true? That is true. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. Okay? It's huge. A time to kill and a time to heal. There's war. A time to break down and a time to build up. Sometimes there is. Sometimes it's better to break it down and then to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. We all have that. A time to mourn and a time to dance. Sadness and joy. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. What is that? What could that mean? Wonder what that means. I think of the stones that they put in the river. Was it Joshua when they were crossing the river and the Lord told them to put a batch of stones there? I think of that. Maybe totally different. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. There is a time. You don't embrace all the time. Yeah, I've had people try to manipulate. Hey, look, let's just hug, man. Let's hug, make it feel good. No, man. That's not the right time. It's not the right time. When you're trying to manipulate me, no. A time to seek and a time to lose. So they put in contrast a time to seek after something and then a time to lose something. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silent and a time to speak. And I tell you what, there is a time to keep silent and a time to speak. Personally, globally, when you're on vast levels, you've got to understand when to keep silent, when to speak. A time for love and a time for hate. A time for war and a time for peace. Huh? What's that? That's the gold nugget for today. Time to love and a time to hate. Time for war and a time for peace. And I tell you what, we've got a lot of decisions here to make as Americans. Most of us don't have the stomach to slap down the little fellows out there who wear ski masks and call themselves some sort of Antifa. We don't have the stomach to call them for what they are. We don't have the stomach to call what is not racism hate. Okay, I mean, what racism is versus people who are just angry and just have a general hate, general upsetness, a general frustration. Okay, we have a hard time because the media starts to try to give us a narrative of who we are and what we should be thinking and what we should be doing, instead of us getting in the Bible and figuring out where is that wisdom that's telling us who we are, what we should do, and where we should go. All right, where is that? It's surely not on the CNN news. Those guys it's been proven that these people have been literally staging news scenes to pass off as if it is real protesting and different things like this. Crazy. I'm sure Fox News is guilty too. I'm sure there's a bunch of people, but the point is that we've got to find what is in here and go out there and start to make some discerning decisions. We need to say, hey, look, this looks right. This smells wrong, though. This doesn't line up with the Bible. Looks right, doesn't line up. Okay? We will convince ourselves of so much wickedness that we will choke ourselves on it. We will. And we're slowly doing it right now. We've got a big choke coming up because we're about to swallow a bunch of stuff that the media is going to downplay, this North Korea thing. And who are the media people? I mean, who are these people? Because they are essentially swaying the way you think. I'll tell you what, I took a marketing class once, and maybe more than once, but one in particular, the teacher told us the marketing strategy is this. They can't tell you what to think, but they can tell you what to think about. So if their news stories is about Russia and how we are almost subjugated to them through Trump, then guess what? They can't tell you what to think, but they can tell you what to think about. So now you got to think about that very thing. If you are watching these news organizations, if people give you information, false or not, that's what you have to think about. And if they sway it, and these people, look, there's whole strategies. One is called creative nonfiction. And there's whole strategies of how to write the narrative so that, well, there's truth in what they're writing, but the way they've made it the way they framed it is really gone into a different direction. That's a skill that they teach that in college. It's called creative nonfiction writing. I've taken a class too, and I tell you what, hey, it can be very effective. And if used wisely, there's probably a place for it. There's a time for it. But the time isn't when you are trying to get the opinion of people to understand what the variables are, and then have them make a decision. That's not the time. Okay, that's not the time to be trying to use creative nonfiction. People need to have a modicum of understanding. There will always be bias in anything that people report. Okay, unless you have just total scope of the whole scene, start to finish. Even certain camera footage, it's going to only tell a certain picture. So everything out there needs, is going to have some bias, but there's some where they're taking it and changing it up in so different of a way that they're seriously compromising truth. And the Lord knows what's going on. He knows what's going on. And there's a time for him to pluck up these fools and put them in their place. He will handle them. Now, back to time for everything. This time for everything is a huge, huge, huge little piece of wisdom. Little piece of wisdom, huh? It's little. There's not much to it. How many lines? There's like 2 paragraphs, a stanza or 2. But guess what? It's so huge. It's so huge. I would encourage you to meditate on this. What time is it? There's a time that I might need to go on the road, and then there's a time that I may need to be at home. There's a time. There's a time for everything. So discern what that means in your life. Is the Lord speaking to you? Are you getting wisdom? Are you finding the light? Are you finding the little footstep in front of you that's lit up, that the Lord's lighting up for you? Are you finding the next one? Okay. Do you have your path, and do you have your plan, and then the path, and maybe the Lord is lighting up that path? Because if you don't, maybe you aren't pouring into the Word. Maybe you aren't praying. Maybe you aren't doing those things that will allow the Lord to light this up. Okay. I know you want like a bunch of road flares right in front of you, but God really doesn't work that way. He doesn't play those games. He doesn't bow down to your every will. He says you bow down to his will. And when you start getting into the Word, then you can see those road flares, his plan, his steps right in front of you like a road flare. That's his road flare. But he ain't going to come down because you want a big road flare, just step by step by step. And you want one big, a big cherry looking road flare. You know what a road flare is? You're on the road and you see these red fire sticks that are glowing in the road. That's called a road flare. A lot of people want there's God, show me the way. And they want him to set up like road flares from their destination, their point of origin to their destination, as if he would bow down to your will and just do that for you because you need it, you demand it. You get in his Word. You get in his Word, and you're going to realize you don't need those road flares. What you need is prayer, you need obedience, and then you need to get in his Word. And then, my friends, then you have the path lit in front of you. Are you getting that? Get wisdom, get understanding, get insight. Let's do this.